What's going on, guys, and welcome to another Doctor Who ranking video. Today I'll be ranking series 1 to 13 of the new series from worst to best. These are only my opinions, so please be respectful in the comments and I'd love to hear your rankings too. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Number 13. Series 13, Flux. The most recent series of the show finds itself in the bottom slot. With this series only being 6 episodes long, it had to really deliver, especially after an almost 2-year break since series 12. Well, for me, it didn't deliver. I wasn't a big fan of the series long arc of Flux, especially when most of the episodes were only about Flux with no other side plot or villain. The 2 episodes that did stray away from Flux a bit, War of the Sontarans and Village of the Angels, were by far my favourite episodes in the series. Other than these, the rest of the series wasn't very interesting and the resolution at the end was poor. I think Jodie bedded herself into the role a lot better this series, and Yaz finally had more to do, now being the main companion, but other than that, not much to write home about. Number 12. Series 7. The final series for the 11th Doctor was honestly a bit of a mess. Splitting it up in 2 parts with 5 episodes with Amy and Rory and then the rest of the series with Clara just didn't flow and felt like 2 separate series. This is also probably the first of the new series that doesn't have a 10 out of 10 episode in it for me. There's some good ones here like A Town Called Mercy and The Name of the Doctor, but then some of this era's worst like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, Nightmare in Silver and Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS. It also doesn't help that Clara is less of a companion here and more of a plot device. It's not a controversial opinion that the 2 versions of Clara we got before the main one seem like more interesting characters than the one we got. It's interesting to find out what the deal is with her, but something about it just doesn't sit right with me. All in all, this is definitely my least favourite Matt Smith and Stephen Moffat era series. Number 11. Series 11. So now we have the 13th Doctor's first series and it's not great. This saw the introduction of Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, 3 new companions, and Chris Chibnall as the new showrunner. It also decreased the episodes in the series from 12 to only 10, so naturally better quality was expected. Well, apart from better special effects, the quality of the story writing went down considerably. The pacing of most episodes fell off, the comedy elements felt really forced and aimed at a younger audience than the previous few series, and story plots were mostly dull. It didn't help that this series had no real series story arc either, like the previous 10 did on some level. Apart from a couple of decent episodes like Demons of the Punjab and Kablam, most were very mediocre or downright awful in the case of the Saranga Conundrum. Safe to say it was a rocky start for this era. Number 10. Series 12. And already we've featured all 3 of Jodie and Chibnall's series in the bottom 4. Series 12 was a definite step up from Series 11 for me, but still had its issues. The Timeless Child's story arc was intriguing, if not a bit disappointing with what it ended up being, although it doesn't bother me as much as it does some people. Despite still not having a 10 out of 10 episode for me, this series does have stronger episodes in its lineup. Fugitive of the Jadoon and The Haunting of Villa Diodati are 2 of my favourites from this era, and even the 2-part opener and finale are decent. There's still episodes I dislike, such as Can You Hear Me and the terrible Orphan 55, but on the whole, it's much better. The Master returns in this series too, and I think Sacha Dhawan does a great job in the role. Altogether, this is my favourite series of this era, but still not great. Number 9. Series 9. Peter Capaldi's second series as the 12th Doctor, and I often change my thoughts on this one. On one hand, episodes like Under the Lake Before the Flood, Face the Raven and Heaven Sent are amazing, but then you've got The Girl Who Died, Sleep No More and Hellbent, which I really dislike. It's also different in the way that almost every episode in the series is a 2-parter, and even the ones that technically aren't, the following episode is somewhat of a sequel to the previous one. I'm not sure this really works, especially for episodes to watch back individually later, as you can't really just pick out one episode to watch since it will most likely have a follow-up. My main problem with this series and its issue I have with Hellbent 2 is how they deal with Clara. So many times over the last 3 seasons she's had endings that would have been satisfying, but her actual ending is the least satisfying and frustrating of them all. A very mixed bag series for me. Number 8. Series 6. Matt Smith's second series now, and it's another mixed bag. The opening episode, The Impossible Astronaut, set up a really intriguing story of the Doctor's death, but as the series progressed, mainly in the second half, it all became a bit of a farce. I think this series is Moffat's overcomplicated writing at its worst. There's too much going on at many points, and it can be hard to wrap your head around, especially after one viewing. There are some great episodes in here though, like the opening two-parter, A Good Man Goes to War, and The God Complex. However, some weak episodes like Let's Go Hitler, Closing Time, and The Wedding of River Song let this one down a lot. Like I mentioned before, the first half of the series is pretty good for me, and there's episodes in there that I don't hate as much as other people, but the second half, other than a couple of standouts, is not good. Number 7. Series 8. The 12th Doctor's first series is another one that has plenty of good, but also a bit too much bad. The writers also didn't seem to quite know what they wanted this Doctor to be like yet, as he comes off quite rude and angry a lot, but also has random moments of comedy that just don't always fit in. There are some great episodes here though, like Mummy on the Orient Express and Flatline, but some not great ones like Kill the Moon and In the Forest of the Night. The series arc of working out who Missy is interesting at the start, but eventually gets a bit boring and repetitive when you see her at the end of pretty much every episode. The reveal of her being the Master in the finale though is great, and one that I did not expect at all on first viewing. This is a series that definitely isn't perfect, but is a good enough start for this Doctor. Number 6. Series 2. The first RTD era series on the list, and it's Series 2 with the 10th Doctor. There's no hiding that David Tennant is my favourite Doctor, but Series 2 is quite easily his weakest series. It mainly comes down to this series having some of the worst episodes in this era in it, and the relationship between the Doctor and Rose not being to everyone's liking. The fact it's a romantic relationship that seems to be reciprocated both ways doesn't sit right with me in a lot of ways. This series has some great episodes though, like The Impossible Planet, The Satan Pit, School Reunion, and The Girl in the Fireplace. However, some weaker episodes include New Earth, Love and Monsters, and Fear Her. Although I don't think the worst in this era is anywhere near as bad as the worst in Moffat or Chibnall's eras, there is a considerable gap between these and the very best episodes. This is mostly a good series with a few things that let it down. Number 5. Series 5. Now for the 11th Doctor's first and best series, Series 5. This series brought the biggest changes to the show since its revival in 2005, with a new Doctor, new showrunner, and just a whole new feel to the show. Matt Smith also made for a very different Doctor to what we'd seen before, as he was very young in appearance, but had this strangeness and wisdom about him that made you believe that he was much older than he looked. Amy as a companion was never my favourite, as she seemed to also have a romantic relationship with him, but also had a fiancé. Thankfully, this wasn't reciprocated by the Doctor, and they just became the best of friends. Some great episodes here include The 11th Hour, The Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, and Vincent and the Doctor. There were still some weak episodes in Victory of the Daleks and The Vampires of Venice, but it's a good series on the whole. Number 4. Series 10. And the best Moffat era series for me is the 12th Doctor and Moffat himself's final series, Series 10. We could finally see Capaldi with a companion other than Clara, and this was a breath of fresh air. Bill was a pretty ordinary companion, but that felt perfect after the plot device that Clara was. The 12th Doctor is also at his best here, as after 2 series of the writers not quite knowing what they wanted him to be, here he's got a mix of the best parts from both series to make a near perfect characterization. Some standard episodes, like Oxygen and World Enough in Time, The Doctor Falls, really stand the test of time. I don't think there are any terrible episodes here, however the Monk trilogy starts good but finishes poorly, and episodes like Smile, Empress of Mars, and The Eaters of Light were a bit disappointing. Otherwise, this is a very enjoyable series. Number 3. Series 1. This is where it all began for the revival of the show, and it started with a bang. Christopher Eccleston portrayed a war-torn Doctor who had been through some stuff that we would learn about throughout this series and the show as a whole. Rose worked better as a companion to 9 compared to 10 too, because there was no thought of a romantic relationship, just 2 friends travelling the universe together. Some great episodes include Dalek, The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, and The Parting of the Ways. The Long Game was definitely the weakest of the series for me, with a couple of others being only average, but this was a great start for the show and gave a great base to work from in the coming years. Number 2. Series 3. The 10th Doctor's second series comes as runner-up in my ranking, as it has some of the best episodes in the show's history to me. This series introduced Martha Jones as the new companion, who is a character I really like. Yes, she still has that romantic feeling for the Doctor, but maybe it just doesn't bother me here because the Doctor doesn't feel like that back at her. When she works this out and leaves the Doctor before it gets too much for her, which I think was a good way for her to exit the TARDIS. This series has my favourite story in the show, with Human Nature and the Family of Blood, as well as other classics like Smith and Jones, Blink and Utopia. All other episodes I think are at least decent, apart from the Lazarus Experiment, which is the episode that definitely is my least favourite in the series. Number 1. Series 4. If you've watched my ranking and any other videos before, you probably would have guessed that Series 4 would be my favourite series. This is Tennant's final full series as the 10th Doctor and features my favourite companion in Donna Noble. The Dr. Donna series story arc is so well done too, and it all comes to such an emotional end in the final episode with I think the most heart-wrenching companion departure in the show's history. This is also the only series of the revival that I don't think has a single bad episode. The Doctor's Daughter is probably the weakest, but that's still a 7 out of 10 decent story to me. Episodes like The Fires of Pompeii, Silence in the Library Forest of the Dead, Turn Left and The Stolen Earth Journey's End are some of my absolute favourites. To me, Series 4 is easily the best series of the modern era. Well, there we have it. That's my ranking from worst to best of the 13 series of Doctor Who so far in the modern era. How would you guys rank these series? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to respect each other's opinions, as they are after all just opinions. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.